Good morning and welcome to Rising. We have a great show for you today. As always, I'm Amber Duke, joined by Jessica Burbank, and we're going to get right into it. It was a pep rally on the Hill for Donald Trump yesterday. He was met with open arms from the GOP as he visited Congress Thursday for the first time since being convicted of 34 felony counts in the hush money case. Trump met with lawmakers from the House and Senate to highlight what he has in store for a second-term agenda should he be reelected. In a press conference following two closed-door meetings between the former president and Republican lawmakers, Trump assured people that the party is united and strong, and they agree on just about everything. Let's watch.
There's tremendous unity in the Republican Party. We want to see borders. We want to see strong military. We want to see money not wasted all over the world. We have great unity. We have great common sense. A lot of very smart people in this room and a lot of people that love our country. They love our country beyond just about all else. This is an outstanding group of people. I'm with them 1,000%. They're with me 1,000%. We agree just about on everything, and if there isn't, we work it out.
Meanwhile, as Trump did his unity tour on Capitol Hill yesterday, the Republican National Committee is hard at work planning for the July convention that the former president may not attend. Republican officials are ensuring that Trump will be able to address convention attendees from afar, in case he's forced, because of his legal troubles, to do so from home. He could be sentenced to house arrest following the conviction that found him guilty on 34 counts of falsification of business records. According to two sources familiar with the planning, preparations are being made at Trump's home in Mar-a-Lago and in Milwaukee, the host city for the convention, should Trump choose to either make appearances from remote or be unable to attend. So he could be remote in Wisconsin, he could be at home, but thankfully people are used to that because of COVID or conviction. I think him joining from Zoom would be a different vibe than the Trump we get in person. But Amber, how do you think this would affect the campaign if he has to join remote?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that the convention speeches are really useful for much else other than just rallying the party's base. I don't think they're typically places where voters make up their minds about who they're going to support. So in that sense, I'm not sure that it's that important, but I think, the party obviously wants to see him there. If he is forced to do it from home, though, I think there's sort of the flip side where often when Trump is hamstrung by these legal issues, it causes even a greater rallying point for his base to point to him being treated unfairly, of being a victim of a politicized and weaponized justice system. So you will probably see that argument come out if he is forced to do it from home. There's also reports that members of the Democratic National Convention who are supposed to be speaking there might also be doing remote speeches. Apparently, there's concern that pro-Palestinian protests outside of the convention center in Chicago could cause bad optics for the Democratic Party, and so they've started making some preparations for some remote speeches as well. So we might actually see it with both the DNC and the RNC.
Yeah, I know Trump probably regrets dissolving a lot of the cybersecurity infrastructure we had, considering he might have to be our first Zoom president. But I think in all seriousness, people have real concerns and real questions as to whether or not he'll be able to serve as president if he's on house arrest, leading up to his conviction, when we decide, really what he's convicted, what his sentence will be. That's, I think, really the point at which people will decide what their vote will be. There's a huge swath of people that, when he was found guilty, really did say, I'm not voting for him. But I think a large amount of the people that said, if Trump's convicted of a felony, he doesn't have my vote. They were not imagining this to be the crime. They were not imagining, this to be the trial he would have. I think they were imagining something new would happen than something he had done years ago. But I still think there's a group of people that don't want a convicted felon to be president. They still believe in the American justice system. And I think there's an additional group of people that maybe weren't lost on the guilty, ruling and the jury verdict of guilty, but they might be lost on a prison sentence, which I think a lot of people believe is unlikely, but still possible.
Right. Yeah. I think if Trump were actually sentenced to any significant jail time, that it would probably backfire pretty aggressively on the Democrats and on the left. Let's also dig in a little bit into what Trump said during this meeting with Republicans at the Capitol Hill Club. He apparently actually floated the idea of eliminating the income tax and making up the lost revenue from increased tariffs. He has not confirmed that publicly, that is a stance that he will take. But we also know that last week he said that he was going to support getting rid of taxes on tips for wait staff, which is seen as a somewhat, I guess, progressive position from a conservative president. Were you surprised to hear these economic ideas from Trump?
I don't think so. What we've seen in Nebraska is this shift from income tax to sales tax, and a lot of the projections show that that would actually increase sales tax to 21.6%. And so that's extremely high. And I think when you eliminate, income taxes altogether, as Nebraska is trying to do, you put yourselves in a tough situation if there's not a slow rollout process for a policy that's as big as that to eliminate income taxes. But I do think Trump would be smart to revisit what the Trump 2025 tax plan is. That is his tax plan that expires in December of next year, because it's become extremely unpopular that you have permanent corporate tax cuts at about 21%, but middle class and working class people, those tax cuts are expiring. He's going to need to say what the plan is for those people. And if we can offset the income taxes with additional tariffs, I think a lot of people would be like, that's great. But how is it going to impact global trade? How is it going to impact our access to goods and services that are inexpensive at a time when inflation's extremely high? And so I think if people are paying additional, prices in groceries, the money that is going out, if it's going to the federal government or it's going out on groceries thanks to increased tariffs, I think as long as the money's going out, working people will be struggling. It doesn't really matter what the policy is. So I think making working people whole again is this huge economic task that you really have to look at the private sector and some kind of additional regulation for these price increases without additional value added to the goods and for wages being stagnant, despite the huge tax cuts he gave to corporations.
It's also Trump's birthday today. Happy birthday to the former president. In addition to this meeting on Capitol Hill, he did the Logan Paul podcast. For those unfamiliar, Logan Paul and his brother Jake are sort of, I guess, internet influencers. Jake Paul now is a boxer, and he appeared on this podcast that is, I guess, very popular with members of Gen Z. And we've actually seen that among young people, support for Trump is increasing. We've actually seen that among that this is a very popular podcast among Gen Z, and Gen Z has been breaking a little bit more towards Trump than previous youth votes have been. What do you think the reason for that is, Jessica?
I think a lot of young people are reaching voting age and making up their political minds. These are likely, I think, kids of more conservative households. And I don't think it's more of a trend we're seeing away from the really leftist Gen Z that we know. I think maybe there's more people that were formerly not paying attention to politics because so many members of Gen Z started paying attention earlier than a lot of previous generations. We've seen walkouts organized at schools in response to the legislation in Florida around whether or not you can talk about queerness and gender in schools. We've seen a lot of organizing around shootings, like the Parkland shooting, a lot of politicization of life for very young people that I think we don't see in previous generations. So while there were some people that were just really roped into politics, or whether it's around climate, mass shootings, or around a lot of the anti-LGBTQ policies we've seen across the country, there's still a group of young people that were never motivated to make up their minds about politics yet. And so I don't see it's Gen Zers changing their early minds. I think it's just more people making up their mind that previously hadn't been paying attention before. But I did see a clip of Logan Paul and Trump face to face as if they were going to box, which I don't think we could expect. And then they just started laughing. It looked like they were about to kiss. And I think that's what provoked the laughter. It was a great clip.
Yeah, it was really Quite hilarious. People should check that out and stick around, of course, because we have a lot more rising after this.